When we lead, learn, and live the way the brain works best, we simply get better results with less effort. Want to know the number one way to transform your time and your team and your talent? Effective delegation. Today I want to share with you 5 important things you absolutely need to know to set a delegation up for the greatest success. And after this video, if you want to learn more, you can click the link below and access the ultimate delegation checklist and a few more videos that dive a little bit deeper into these really important 5 criteria. Okay, let's get started. Hi friends, I'm Sherry Yellin, author of Unforgettable Leadership, 7 Principles for Leading, Learning, and Living, the president of the Yellin Group, and every single day we work with leaders and aspiring leaders to help them grow themselves, their teams, and their profits. And what we're talking about today, effective delegation, is the number one way to do all 3 of those things. So recently I was at one of our local stores and it was nearly closing time. I was the last customer in there and I'm at the counter to check out, and the worker, who was also the manager, mentioned that the boxes behind her still had to be unpacked before she could leave. And then she mentioned that no one on her team had unloaded these boxes, and so it was all on her to do. And then she said, but I'm glad they didn't, because they probably wouldn't have done it right. You know, if you want anything done right, you have to do it yourself. Oh, how many times have we heard this in coaching? And I think all of us, if we haven't said it, we've thought it at one point or another. It's just faster if I do it myself, or it's just easier if I do it myself, or like she was saying, if you want something done right, yes, you have to do it yourself. The problem is there's a great cost that we pay when we fail to delegate effectively. We're not only impacting our own time and our own talent, but we're impacting the time and talent of our team and of our entire organization. When we can delegate and delegate effectively, we're going to maximize our own time and talent. Listen, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should be doing something. And we have to remember that anytime we're saying yes to doing things that other people could and probably should be doing, we're saying no, usually, to the things where we could be investing our talent. We're saying, no to the things that probably we are the only ones that really could be doing that for the team. But we're also, when we can delegate effectively, we are maximizing the time and talent of our team. We build trust because we've trusted another team member to partner with us on a task. We also build commitment because we're giving other team members an opportunity to learn and grow and shine. And then we build capacity, because doing is the number one way to growing our skills and capabilities. You might have heard of the 70-20-10 rule. That's a really important rule if you're in learning and development. What it's telling us is that only about 10% of our development comes from formal learning opportunities like classes. About 20% of our development comes from our relationships and learning from other people. But 70% of our learning comes from actually doing. And so delegation is so instrumental in helping us build the capacity of our team. In a way, you might think about delegation as developing others. especially when it includes the 5 criteria that I want to walk you through today. And while we're learning to be a better delegator, it's important that we also hone our skill in being a better delegate. So delegation is a very interesting word, and if you kind of look up the history of it, it becomes even more interesting. So it comes from a Latin word delegare, which means to send on a mission. And then the prefix de means away from. Dig a little bit deeper, and this was not only to send on a mission away from you, but it was about being an ambassador of that individual. And not just any ambassador, but the original meaning of the word means to be an ambassador on the part of, on behalf of the Pope. So let's pull all 3 of those things together. And essentially, a delegation is almost like a sacred partnership where you are entrusting someone to go on a mission on your behalf for something very important. Delegation is really a high trust relationship, and it requires both an effective delegator and an effective delegate in order to make this relationship the most successful and the most impactful for the entire organization. But the awesome thing is when we can get it right, it's a win-win-win for the delegator. It's a win because it gives back time and it allows them to invest their talent where it really needs to be invested for the greatest return. It's a win for that team member because they grow and they learn and they build a relationship. And it's a win for the organization. It's a win for the organization externally because it improves business results and efficiency and profits. It's also a win internally for the culture because it really builds commitment, it builds capacity, as I've mentioned, and then it really builds engagement. But the important point here is that the success of a delegation on the back end is dependent on the success of setting up the delegation on the front end. So let me say that again because this is so incredibly important. The success and the ease of a delegation on the back end of it, like when we're celebrating this delegation, that's all a result of how well we set the delegation up on the front end. And it really does require about 5 things of both the delegate and the delegator. So, first of all, it requires that both the delegate and the delegator from the very beginning are clear on what winning looks like. What does winning look like in this delegation? Think about it. If both are at the end of the delegation and they're high-fiving because it went smoothly and they got, the ultimate result, both of them can tell you what has to have happened in order to get them to that place. It also requires that both of them are clear not only on winning, what winning looks like, but what done looks like, so that we are all on the same page from the very beginning. A third thing that can be really important under this particular criteria is that they're both really clear on the why behind the delegation. Why is this delegation important? And why is that particular person being selected for the delegation? So a second thing that's really important about delegation being set up for the greatest success is that both parties are clear on the level of autonomy. So a level 1 autonomy or a level 1 delegation is one where it is absolute compliant, where you need to do exactly as I've said. Whereas a level 5 delegation is, I'm just going to hand it over to you and however you choose to do it. In fact, you may not even need that person to circle back and let you know that it's done. On our team, we call that tossing it over the fence. So first of all, they're clear on what winning looks like, and both parties, the delegate and the delegator, are clear on the level of autonomy that's being given within the delegation. A third thing that's super important in order to set delegation up for the greatest success is that both are clear on any non-negotiables. So most of the time when we delegate, the non-negotiables are in our head, sort of. We think we know them, but sometimes even we're not even 100% clear on what those non-negotiables are. But we expect other people to read our mind around non-negotiables. Well, an effective delegation is one where both the delegate and the delegator have intentionally talked through non-negotiables. So let me give you an example. Let's say I want to delegate to you finding a training room for an upcoming workshop. And then I walk away, but I haven't been clear on non-negotiables, like it needs to have a window, we need to have AV equipment, or it needs to be able to accommodate 200 people, and we need to be able to accommodate potentially 500 people, or we need to keep it under a budget of $500 for the entire day. There are always non-negotiables in a delegation. The problem is sometimes we're not clear on those, or we don't communicate those. They don't get met, and then we rush to the belief that it's just faster if I do it myself. Well, I want to challenge that today, because it really is just faster if we get better at delegating. Here's the fourth thing that we find that can be one of the number one things that we overlook, and then we don't end up with a successful delegation. The number 4 is both the delegate and the delegator have talked through how they are going to hold themselves and each other accountable. So it might sound something like the delegator is saying, I want an update on a weekly basis, and I want that update in an email with an attached Excel spreadsheet. Or it might sound like the delegator asking the delegate, how would you like for me to hold you accountable? What's the best way for me to hold you accountable? And the delegate, we find, will sometimes set more strict guidelines and deadlines than the delegator ever would in the first place. So they'll usually say, I want you to check in with me at the end of the day tomorrow, where we might have thought, wow, we don't need that for a couple of weeks. But the important thing here is that we've talked through the accountability piece. Let me just tell you why that's so important, because we've all been here. If you've been involved in delegation at all, I'm guessing at one point or another, you've created this icky, awkward space where you've delegated something, but you don't really know for sure if it's being done. And you don't want to follow up with them, because then that comes across as being a micromanager. And that's real frustrating, and it leads us right back to that belief of, if you want anything done right, do it yourself. Well, what we have to just own is that we created that icky, awkward space because we didn't have the conversation around accountability in the beginning. The fifth thing that becomes super important if we want an effective delegation is that both the delegate and the delegator repeat back to each other what they heard in steps 1, what winning looks like and why the delegation is important. 2, what's the level of autonomy. 3, what are the non-negotiables. And then 4, how are we going to hold each other accountable? The delegate and the delegator need to really repeat that back to each other. That's so important, because what you say is not always what people hear. And to take that one step further, oftentimes what we think we said was not really what we did say, and definitely may not be what the other person heard. So the fifth thing that we want to do is repeat that back to each other. And then we want to review as we go along, how's the delegation going, so that we can make any adjustments real time. And then at the end, was it easy? Was it effortless? Did it get us the result? And if it didn't, that doesn't mean failure. That means helpful feedback that will help us be even better in the future when we need to work together in this sacred, high-trust partnership. The good news is that though effective delegation doesn't happen on accident, the good news is that we do know what needs to happen on the front end to set it up for the greatest success. And another important piece of good news is that when we get this delegation thing right, it has exponential returns for the delegator, for the delegate, for the entire organization. Effective delegation really is the '1 way to grow yourself, to grow your team, and to grow your profits. Again, if you want more information, you can click the link below, download the delegation blueprint. There are a few more videos around this topic. I'm hoping that you're finding this topic really relevant for you right now and helpful. And if so, the greatest compliment that you can give us is to hit subscribe. We appreciate that so much. In the end, if we want better results with a lot less effort, let's commit to leading, learning, and living the way the brain works best, no matter what.